In today's video, we're going to examine whether or not the Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens would be a good fit to make an NHL trade. And that's coming up next. Everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. On this channel, we review and discuss all 31 NHL teams with an unbiased opinion. So if you love hockey, consider hitting that subscribe button now so you don't miss anything. Alright, so let's discuss the Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens. I was looking through the Edmonton Oilers, obviously, as we all know, the Habs and Oilers both have been having subpar years, both underwhelmed with their performance, and there's been lots and lots of speculation about what they need to do and changes they need to make in order to get themselves back on track. So, there's been all kinds of Habs speculation lately about Cammarleri and what they're going to do, and there really isn't anything new on that front. The trade that I'm going to discuss here today is strictly my own opinion. I don't have any sources that I can reference that this is actually being discussed, but I think this is a move both clubs need to look at, and I wanted to have a discussion with you guys to see what everybody else out there thinks of this move and if this is something that they should take a look at. So here are my thoughts. If you take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, I came to this conclusion by examining the Oilers roster, and my original intent was just to do a video on how I thought the Oilers could rejig things and improve themselves. And after I got looking at it, I was like, well, you know, there's a lot of issues here that I think can be solved with the Oilers and Habs getting together. So why not change the topic here? And we're mostly going to talk about the Oilers, but I think when you bring in the Habs, you'll see how this all fits together. So if you take a look at the Edmonton Oilers, I personally think they've dug themselves in too deep of a hole to pull themselves out this year. Every time they get anything going, they go on another losing streak. You know, losing 5-6 in a row. They've scored 3 goals in their last 5 games. When you have a roster with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl as your top 2 forwards, and you can't put the puck in the net, that's a major, major issue. Now, the Edmonton Oilers right now are on a road trip, and they have a lot of upper management members with them on this trip, which is a little bit unusual. You do see it from time to time, but there's a lot of speculation that sometime this week the shoe's going to drop in Edmonton and changes are going to be abound. Now, what those are going to be, hard to say. The last speculation I seen was saying that maybe somebody between management and coaching was going to be out of a job. I'm not convinced just yet that that's going to happen. Peter Chiarelli's come out and given his coach Todd McLellan a vote of confidence, but that's all fine and dandy, so it doesn't look like McLellan's going to be going anywhere just yet, but maybe it's Chiarelli they're looking at, which surprises me because I think a GM change is typically done more so in the offseason. So I'm not convinced that we're going to see change in either of those places just yet. I think that maybe the upper management might be working a little bit more with Chiarelli to trying to help influence some moves that they maybe feel that he needs to make. So we'll see on that. But if you look at the Oilers, they've got 3 forwards that are going to be pending UFAs that I think are highly likely not to return to Edmonton, and that they should be looking to unload for whatever they can get back sometime before the deadline. You got Michael Cammarleri, who's 35 years old, you know, not having a fabulous year. They already picked him up from LA, so this is his second team this season that he's played with. You know, they're not likely bringing him back. You might as well move him on, get whatever you can. I'm not sure, it's not going to be a lot. You might be able to recoup maybe a 3rd round pick. I'm not really sure what the deal might be there, but they're for a contending club looking to add a veteran depth player. You know, it makes a lot of sense. He still has some speed and probably a few goals left in that stick. So, you know, I think for a small price tag that he brings, you'll probably see another team easily pick him up for a playoff run. You've got Mark Letestu, who's 32 years old now. You know, he's bounced around. I think the Oilers is I think his 3rd team. I think Columbus and Pittsburgh he played with previously. He's not likely going to be re-signed, I wouldn't think. So you want to move Letestu on. You're not going to get a lot back, but there's always a team looking for center depth for the playoffs. You know, maybe one of his old teams has been highly speculated that Pittsburgh needs another center. I'm not really sure Letestu's really the answer, but he would add some depth, and, you know, I don't know if they want to take a look at him or not. But either way, this video is not about where these players are going. It's about what the Oilers need to do and how if the Oilers and Habs hook up, they can solve some issues. So the other little bit bigger name on Edmonton that needs to probably move on is Patrick Maroon. Now, Patrick Maroon is, by a lot of people's eyes, having a down year. But if you look at his statistics previously in the last couple of years, he's probably, if he has a slightly better second half of the season this year, could probably be pretty well on par to what he's done before, and he hasn't been getting the ice time with McDavid. So Clearly, I think this is a role that you get Maroon and Lucic. They're very similar type players. You've got Lucic tied up for $6 million for another 5 years. Obviously, that's a way tougher contract to move. You get Maroon, who's a UFA. I don't really think you need both of those guys there. You move Maroon out to a contender as well. You could probably get something a little bit better back there. You might be able to get a second, maybe depending if there's a package deal, maybe a higher draft pick. Hard to say, but those guys, I think you move all of them out. You get some picks, prospects, whatever you can get in return. You don't worry about it too much. Your season's at a loss. Now, the other player that's been discussed, and we've talked about it here before, but for the most part, through our discussions on this channel, we've kind of come to the conclusion that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins probably isn't going to be traded. Now, the main reason I see in the comments from a lot of you viewers is that why would the Oilers trade him when he's playing really well? He's been one of their better forwards this year, and that's exactly the reason why you do trade him. You sell high, you don't sell low. It's no different than playing in the stock market. You don't want to buy an asset low and then you want to buy it low, sell it high. You don't want to do the opposite and then lose money, lose value here. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has been a fairly consistent player. There's obviously a lot of debate on whether he's lived up to his first overall reputation that he came into the league with. Probably not quite the pedigree, obviously, that we see with a McDavid type player. He's not at the same level, or an Austin Matthews. But, he's still worked out to be a pretty decent, solid player for them. And really, for being a number 3 center, you're not going to get too many better number 3 centers than Nugent-Hopkins. So, being that said, on a lot of other teams, he would certainly be a higher ranked centerman. Some teams he'd be a first line. Some teams he'd be a second line. So, the fact that he is having a good year, in my opinion, is a good reason to sell that asset, trade it away, bring in something else you need. What do the Habs need more than anything? They need a center iceman. I know there's been lots of speculation on Max Pacioretty, but I think the Habs really need to be careful there. We've talked about the speculation here before, and when we get into the trade rumors, we're just talking about the rumors. We're not necessarily talking about our opinions on what we think should happen, but in all likelihood, I think the Habs really need to be careful. If they can retain Pacioretty, and maybe a guy like Galchenyuk, who's been a lot more inconsistent and a lot more speculated for a longer period of time to be traded, you swap Nugent-Hopkins for Galchenyuk. Now, there could be other players involved, maybe less significant depth players or picks going back and forth to even things out. But really, overall, I don't think you're close to an even trade. I think Nugent-Hopkins has been the more consistent player. The Habs might have to throw a little something else in to sweeten that deal a little bit. But you put Galchenyuk, who has proven to be a better winger than a center, on a line with either McDavid and Draisaitl. That is the level and quality of player. You should see a major improvement in consistency in his game, because that's the kind of players he needs to play with. He's not getting that in Montreal. If you look at Edmonton, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins isn't playing with as high quality of wingers as he could be elsewhere, because he's down the depth chart because of Draisaitl and McDavid. You put Nugent-Hopkins with Pacioretty, that doesn't look so bad. Maybe you throw Gallagher on the right side. That could be an excellent line. Or you also have Jonathan Drouin, for example. You got enough wingers there that you can make a solid first line and have some good pieces for your second line. You look at the Oilers now. If you sell those 3 UFAs off and you get picks and prospects coming back, here's what they could look like next year. For example, Connor McDavid obviously is going to be your top center. Jesse Puljujarvi's played really well. You slot him in on McDavid's right side. You probably put Lucic on that left side. Lucic hasn't been there consistently, but if he can keep his game going, he can be a good winger on that left side. You bring in Galchenyuk from Montreal. You put him with Draisaitl, and then obviously a player that the Oilers gave a good shot to this year and is probably going to crack the lineup next year is Cammarleri Yamamoto. So then that rounds out your top 6. So you can either Galchenyuk and Lucic could be swapped. You could play Chucky with either McDavid or Draisaitl. Either way, you have 2 solid lines there. Yamamoto showed in the World Juniors that he is going to be a top player. I think he can definitely be a top 6 forward. He's got a lot of speed and he can score. So I think next year you're going to see him get promoted up the depth chart. Outside of Yamamoto and Puljujarvi, even though they've had a lot of high draft picks lately, their prospect pool isn't really all that deep, in my opinion, going beyond those guys. So if you move them in, you still leaves you with Ryan Strome. Now, he's an RFA. He needs to be qualified at $3 million next year. I know that's probably a price tag they're probably not going to be real keen on. Maybe they explore some options there in the summertime to maybe look at swapping that. But if you hang on to Strome, because he has been a little better lately, you still have guys like Drake Caggiula, Zach Kassian, Slepyshev, Kara to round out your bottom 6. You might want to bring in, at least one maybe a veteran bottom 6 forward to kind of round things out. But in my opinion, that really rounds things out nicely. Your top 6, there should be no reason to score. You've added a scoring winger. You've moved out an asset as a third line center that can be a top center somewhere else. Helps the Habs out. You know, hopefully they can retain Cammarleri and not do something crazy. You know, when you just don't take 30 goal guys and move them away for, you know, because things aren't going well. Like, you need to work around things, and they do need to make a move. But I think Galchenyuk's the guy, not Cammarleri. I think that deal would help both teams quite substantially. So what I want to know from you is, what do you think of that deal? Do you think, am I anywhere on par with what the Oilers need to do to kind of retool here? And do you think the Habs and Oilers could be a good fit for make a trade? Galchenyuk, RNH. You might throw in some other pieces to make, like I said, to make everything even out here. But it also gives Oilers a little bit of cap relief too, because Galchenyuk's contract's a little bit lower than Nugent Hopkins. Is also shorter, so it gives you that short-term flexibility where McDavid's mega deal kicks in next year. So I don't know. I think it would work. I think it would be good for both teams. I want to know what you think. Do you think this is a deal that they should explore doing? Leave some comments down below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like the video if you liked it. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We talk hockey here every day, all 31 teams, all the time. And we'll be catching you in the next video.